Okay, I'm sorry, I have a cold, so I use the microphone. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our last MGCA meeting of the season of 2011-2012. And I'd like to introduce to you John Buscarella. Perfect time. Who is our board newly elected board member. He is the liaison to MGCA. Okay, we want to start with the approval of the minutes, but if it's okay with you, I'd like to start with the report of if it's okay with everybody, I would rather start first with the report of the board member. Any objections?
No, I think that's a wonderful idea.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce to you Alfred, our new board member, who is going to give us report on first on the June 7 meeting. You want to chair? I'll give it to you. Okay. And then we will report on the meeting of Tuesday, last Tuesday, yeah, 2 days ago.
Right.
Okay? You are also, let me give up.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Do I have to move the microphone closer? Maybe.
Jones. Just
Hear me now.
share. Marsha is supposed to do it before. So just you share this. That's why I asked you not to please.
Okay, so what I will do first, as Tobit said, was to go over the special meeting that was conducted on June 7th. The purpose of that meeting, you have a flash report for that, but I can say essentially the purpose of that meeting was to extend the workday for Brent and Cutsa George for the facades, the balconies, and the roof work. There were 3 motions presented. This all happens by me. One was to increase the to start at 8 o'clock, 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning, as opposed to simply 9 o'clock, with potential noise-producing work. Extend the day from 5 to 6 with noise-producing work, and so adding 2 hours to the workday, as well as adding Saturday work hours for quiet roof-only work. Those were requested by Cutsa George, the owner's rep, Brent, and the board passed them all. So that essentially covers the June 7th meeting. That was the only purpose of that special meeting.
Okay. So you want to do the next one? Over here.
Yes.
Okay, before we go over to the June 26th meeting,
Good.
you have a question?
Yeah,
Sure, go
this
ahead.
maybe this is better addressed in the June 26th meeting.
Okay.
Issue, but let me just ask it anyway. As I understood the owner rep's presentation at June 26th, the
Oh, so let's
issue
wait for June
we have
26th.
had with needing to extend the work day is that we don't have enough workers for the job.
Okay, now, is that June 26th?
Is that your understanding?
Excuse me.
Yeah, but why don't we wait for the June 26th?
Wait for the June 6th. Okay? All right, now, as you know, the board meeting was Tuesday, and the turnaround for the flash report was 2 days, which used to be like this until 3.5 years ago. So the machinery is not old enough to get it done in 2 days anymore. So what we have here is the president and the secretary were kind enough to kind of go through it, and what we have here are drafts of the minutes, which of the flash report, I'm sorry. They are not signed, they are on white paper. There are 50 copies. So we are going to use it now, and I'm requesting that you give me back all the copies. We are going to shred them. So if there is any internal change between this and the final, we don't get like, oh God, output. Keep in mind, it is a draft. It's not the final flash report. You will get the final flash report will certainly be out no later than Tuesday, as, there's an old motion that was had, like, I believe it was December 2008. So, I'll pass it around, please pass it around. I hope we have enough copies. If not, we'll share. Here, why don't you move it down? And if there are any extra, please give it to me. Oh, we need to applicate. Yeah, and while we are straightening out, I'd like to welcome Meryl Sheldon, who is our new treasurer, who was elected last month. And Meryl is not new to MGCA. Meryl actually was the treasurer way back in the 1980s. So she's an old lady. Thank you, Meryl. Okay, any extra copies? Any copies left? Okay, good.
Okay, I guess I would ask that you not really read the drafts while I'm going through this. I'll tell you now that I'm going to deviate substantially from the very first 2 points in the flash report, the draft flash report, because I think that the details there are important. The first point was the briefing of board responsibilities by Ezra Goodman. There are a number of items that he spoke about. We spent a good half an hour in the meeting with him detailing the responsibilities of directors. What he stressed is that the relationship between directors and shareholders changes once you become a director, because now you're an officer or responsible for the corporation. You have fiduciary responsibilities, and so there is a subtle shift in some things that you can do and speak about. Can you hear me?
Put the microphone closer to you, please.
Well, but not everyone. Yeah, I can tell well why people couldn't hear. Okay, fine.
Thank you.
The items are, they must act in the best interest of the corporation and its residents, even above personal self-interest. If they fail to do so, they may be subject to being sued for breach of assumed fiduciary duty. They are required by law to act honestly, in good faith, and prudently. To make decisions and perform duties they are allowed to rely on information, opinions, reports, and statements presented to them by the corporation's employees and its professionals, lawyers, managing agents, accountants, consultants, etc. The directors are covered by liability insurance, assuming that they are acting in good faith, etc., to cover in the instance when they might be sued. In order to fulfill obligations, directors should at the very least, he had 10 points here, which I'll summarize. Attend all board meetings in order to be familiar with the corporation's affairs. Become familiar with and carefully follow the dictates of the corporation's governing documents, including bylaws, certificates of incorporation, leases, and house rules, which provide the key information regarding procedures and policies. Participate in discussions, fairly consider reports and information presented, and vote on all matters. It is better to avoid abstaining from voting except for good reason, conflict of interest, absence from meeting when issues are discussed, because that is avoiding the director's duty to act for the benefit of shareholders. Honor confidentiality, I think that's obvious. There is information that directors receive that cannot be shared for a whole host of reasons, and that has to be maintained. If a director becomes aware of a matter or a situation that requires remedial action, the director must bring it to the attention of the board so that proper action can be taken if appropriate. Except in extreme cases, a director should never take upon themselves to seek a remedy outside of the framework of the board. The board acts, in other words, as a body. I think this goes without saying, perform duties in a professional and courteous manner without personalizing issues. taking on responsibility, even when the action to be taken is not a popular one. This includes approving contracts, et cetera, I'll say allocating funds, pay for work and services, and even including things when necessary, increasing maintenance and imposing assessments to keep MHHC fiscally sound. It is a corporation we are working with here. Avoid to the extent possible situations that give rise to conflicts of interest or even the appearance of such conflicts. I think everyone understands that, right? Observe the distinction between the role of the board, which is to formulate policies, and the role of management, which is to execute these policies in conjunction with MHHC's consultants, accountants, attorneys, engineers, et cetera, et cetera.
Could you hold the microphone, please?
Sure. And recognize that there are times, and this is a critical one, recognize that there are times when the directors must set aside their own desires and preferences so that the greater good of MHHC may be served. Directors are expected to discuss issues vigorously as necessary to make their individual views and preferences known, but once the board votes on a motion, it must be recognized that such act establishes the policy of the corporation, and directors are required to support it. Any questions about that?
Yes, as I understood it, this was a document that was created by Ezra himself.
Yes.
Did he reference any New York State Business Corporation law to substantiate his recommendations?
No,
Or
but
is it further legal framework?
He didn't. There may be, but he didn't reference that. And if you listen to all the points, I'm sure you can see that they are also.
Okay, may I
concept.
ask you, I suggest we don't interrupt in discussion. Alfred, let's go through
That's
it.
fine with me.
And then have the question, and we'll write down people that want to ask questions rather than your name.
The second point that I'm expanding on is the local law 11 roof facade project report. This was Eugene Farrar, who is the president of JMAS Consultants, was recently hired about 6 weeks ago to be the owner's rep to determine, among other things, whether we need a project manager, project director for the local law 11 work. We provided a verbal report, an oral report on Tuesday, and we will provide a more comprehensive written report within the next few weeks, before the next board meeting. There are a number of points that I'll make on that. He said that an initial review of the documentation pertaining to the project, which is one of his key objectives, was not possible since the MHHC historical progress and change order documentation was essentially non-existent. On the other hand, he considers the documentation provided by Brent Restoration and Professor George Tuman and Allen to be better than he has seen in most cases. He only considers the work and procedures at both Brent and Professor George to be commendable and their documentation to be above par. While he noted that there were decisions made and actions taken that he might have done differently in the same situation, the reasoning and support was generally sound and made sense once it was discussed. As he noted, different people approach projects in different ways, and while he may have initiated the project differently, the work being done is entirely appropriate. Mr. Farrar feels confident that the cost of the site safety managers can be reduced by consolidating responsibilities, which is actively being pursued. And just note that this was attempted in the past, but failed because of other, who knows whether it was the inspector or the particular time that the city was beginning to enforce things very rigorously. But we seem to have had some success. Recently, the site safety managers for building 3, 4, and 5 were consolidated. There was a fear as little as 2 weeks ago that we'd have to have 2 site safety managers to cover those buildings. So now they're trying to consolidate buildings 1, 2, and 6 as well. He briefly outlined why the scope and timetable of the project increased significantly once the project started in 2009. While the initial scope was established by acceptable visual inspection, once actual hands-on work commenced, it became apparent that far more work was required than anticipated. This included not only local law 11 facade work, which was grossly underestimated. Once the sounding was done, so you could actually hear the bad situated bricks and the bricks that were falling apart, but also the recognition that the that extensive balcony restoration was also needed, despite the work that had been conducted about 10 years ago. Also into this mix, the roofs had to be replaced as they began to fail, which was consistent with their expected 20-year lifetimes having been exceeded. Dean reported that about 70% of the facade work is already completed. He has made suggestions to accelerate work that have been agreed to by Brent and George. And even though he was told that it had been previously turned down, that the board had previously turned down the request, he also asked the board to extend the workday and include Saturday hours, which we did. Not surprisingly, he noted that the lack of manpower on the project, an issue that is an issue that has continually pushed. He feels that had the full scope of the work been known at the time of the project's inception, perhaps, two different companies might have been engaged simultaneously to expedite completion. And the reason he said that is that it is Brent very likely doesn't, and no one company probably has enough employees to properly man a project of this size. Most projects are obviously a building or two, not 6, that have to be worked on simultaneously. Okay, regarding some of the delays and unanticipated stop work orders, Mr. Farrar said that there have been more Department of Building code changes in the past 3 years than in the prior 100, and that it wasn't always evident when or if some of these regulations were going to be enforced by the city, which led to lots of confusion even within the Department of Buildings. He noted that at the same time that the number of regulations have been increased, the number of inspectors to enforce them has been reduced, resulting in delays both in inspections but also in following up on lifting stop work orders that have been addressed. To one board member's question about a previously suggested plan of working on only 2 buildings at a time, Mr. Farrar said that that would have put MHAC in a worse situation than it is now because work for this local law 11 cycle must be completed by, he didn't give the date, but I happen to know that it's August of next year, of 2013. And working on 2 buildings at a time would have meant that 3 to 4 buildings would have been in violation, leading up to this, leading to substantial fines at that point, rather than just 1 building. It is likely that building 5 will be the one in violation as opposed to all of them. As opposed to 4 of them had 2 at a time that worked on. To another board member's question about the possibility of value engineering the project, Mr. Farrar reiterated that it was a very large, turned into a very large job, and that he felt that the vast majority of the decisions made by George and Brent were the same ones he would have made in those situations. In some cases, a slightly different approach would most likely have cost the same. So it wasn't, there's maybe a different approach, but it wouldn't effectively change the cost. He did say that going forward, he would look at, take the initial drops on building 5 to see what George was recommending to be done for the facade work, and check it out in his judgment to see if there were any differences. He felt that there may be some differences. If they're minor, that's fine to go ahead with that. If they're major, then maybe discuss some things. He said that the facade work of all things is the least expensive portion of this project. Most of the cost is with the balcony restoration. And as is known, we know that in this building, for instance, a couple of the balconies had to be taken down and rebuilt. That's how bad the balconies are. And he also made a statement that if you can save $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on an $8 million project, it's probably not worth it. So that's his feeling about that. Mr. Farrar believes that the roof work on buildings 1 and 2 can be completed in September. Then the work needs to be inspected by the board of directors and by the Department of Buildings, and we need to be prepared that the inspection may not happen within 2 or 3 weeks after it's completed because, well, 1, the reduced number of inspectors, and 2, the city tends to take its time, as we've seen. Okay, now we'll just go through the other items, I think in much less detail.
Maybe we should take questions like just for this stuff now. Okay?
Any questions on those 2 two items, and especially the local law 11 woodwork and facade work.
Any question on local law 11 right now? Anybody?
I didn't even know.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah, you say, or that he said, that the most expensive aspects of the restoration are of the total cost of the project, not the facade work, but the balconies and terraces. I wonder if you have any, hard information about the relative costs of the different aspects of the project, including balconies and terraces.
No, I don't. Let's say I saw it a few years ago because before the project had started, Brent provided, we forced Brent to provide unit costs for all aspects of the work, even at that point when it wasn't anticipated that there would be much balcony work required. So that exists. I know it exists, but I don't have that at my fingertips.
Are you expecting, the board to develop the management, whoever does it, to get that information broken down into costs per building and per type of, work, and then make it public?
I don't anticipate that occurring. I truly don't. But I'll say it's possible.
Okay. Next.
One thing that I didn't mention that Mr. Farrar said, and that is that he doesn't see a real need for a project manager for the project. He feels that it is being handled adequately. He is willing to stay on as a consultant for minimal hours on a month-by-month basis. But at a certain point, he feels that even that would be overkill. He's willing to step away. He feels it's being well managed.
Okay, enough. Gwen?
Yeah, I just wanna make sure I understand correctly. As far as the scaffolding, bridge work, or whatever the stuff is, on buildings 1 and 2, we cannot anticipate that going down before end of September into October?
Well, we know that the work, assuming weather holds, et cetera,
Right.
that the work is anticipated to be finished in September.
September.
Before the work is completed,
Right.
they will file with the Department of Buildings,
Got that.
so that hopefully they can get someone here about the time when we actually do finish.
Mhm.
But they can't do it too soon because,
Right.
Murphy's Law,
Exactly.
that will be the
Exactly.
time that they show up and we're not.
So
filing.
thinking
Yes.
hopefully, we're not looking at any time before about October, huh?
Possibly, right.
Possibly.
Let's
Right,
start
yeah.
January 2015.
What?
Let's start January 2015, which will be exactly 4 years.
Do we
March.
have any idea of how many balconies need work? What, approximately?
As Tova said, a lot. The figures that I know are now a year old, so that may not be appropriate any longer, but it was something on the order of a full third of the balconies. That was buildings 1 and 2. I don't know what 3, 4, how different 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be, but I do know that there was no need to destroy balconies in buildings 1 or 2 as there was in this building. So there may be more failures here, and we also know that buildings 4 and 5 are the most exposed of the buildings. But
There were balconies taken down in building 2, I can look into them when they're coming down.
there was extensive work being done, but the balconies didn't have to be actually destroyed.
Oh, yes, they did. There were at least 2 of them that were totally gone.
Okay, I'll check on that.
Check
I
on
was
that.
I was led to believe that nothing was destroyed in building 2. Well, it was building 3 that had.
Some, G apartment balcony was taken down totally.
Okay,
I-
okay. Then if that's true, I stand corrected.
Beverly?
Yeah, if work needs to be done on the balcony, and let's say it's enclosed, and the enclosure has to be removed, who bears the expense for that, and then to put the enclosure back on, who bears the expense for that?
That is a board decision, and it depends upon whether the enclosure was done in an approved manner. And that's essentially, and you know, whether it was to code. It is known that some enclosures were not to code.
Okay, they're sort of done like surreptitiously without,
Right.
okay.
Right. Or there may have been an application filed, but the way it was actually done exceeded that.
Okay, now there's one more question and we go on. Go ahead.
All right, maybe a few questions then.
One more
The
question.
first question has to do with the statement you made about August 2013.
Yes.
And if I understood you correctly, is that the legal date beyond which any work which is being done is subject to being fined? That is, that we're supposed to have everything done by?
That's the
And
date.
therefore, that's why only building 5 will be cited?
Right,
Because
the
everybody
other-
else will be done by August 2013?
Either done or in process, substantial enough so that they could be counted as one, which is
Okay, yeah.
safe
Because-
with, you know, repairs.
Right, because.
You know the definition better than. Okay.
Well, as I understood the statements made at board meeting, it probably won't be until May of 2014 before all the work is done. Is that correct?
That is the legal date. That
Yeah,
is
the
by
brand
by
beyond which
by
brand
the
becomes
by the
liable
contract,
for-
by the contract. And
It
Brent
used to be
Brent
December.
would love to be out of here by the end of next year.
Well,
But
that's
they-
what it originally was.
No.
Brent now would love to be out of here by the end of next year, and they think they possibly can, but they cannot commit to that. Their legal date is May of 2014.
Because of all the extra days they get from the.
Exactly. But they would love not to have to take those.
May I interrupt for a second? If we did not have to do balcony of terraces,
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing though, but.
if not for the balconies and terraces, Brent would be out of here by February of 2012. We would be having no bridges anymore,
Right.
okay?
I'm sure that's right.
I know
one
it's
other
right,
question.
I signed the contract,
Yeah.
okay? Okay,
One-
that's it. Next.
One other question.
I think, yeah.
I don't see why there's a reason that we need to stop the question, answer about this.
Other people, yeah.
If other people have questions, that's one thing, but if,
Okay.
We're also trying to, I think.
You have a chance to ask more
And then
questions.
we have to move on, we can't.
We are moving on.
Okay.
well,
Go ahead, Alfred.
trying to
Okay.
stop me took more time than asking an answer.
Alfred, could you please?
Next, minutes of 4 meetings were approved. May 15th meeting, the organizational meeting, both the open and closed sessions, May 22nd, May 24th, and the June 7th special meeting. Those were all approved, so you should see those within the next couple of weeks. For the management report, Russell Germani presented a number of matters. I'll just say the critical invoices. This was something that had been approved in the prior month because some invoices were being delayed in being processed, and this could lead to a halt of certain services. So what was done a month ago is now essentially been made permanent. But understand that those checks will be processed, but they will not be executed until they've been reviewed by the manager and by the board, by the secretary. There was a New York State sales tax settlement refund of over $9,000. That was based upon an audit performed by Mindy Eisenberg Stark. That was accepted. This covered a period from June of 2008 until February of 2011. There was an affiliated FM insurance proceed accepted from to cover kitchen waste stack leak of April 3rd, 2012 to the affected departments in the B and C lines in Building 4. This reflected our $10,000 per occurrence deduction. We have a new general liability insurance policy, and frankly, it was ratified at Tuesday's meeting, even though it was done in May 24th, just to get it into open session, essentially. But our old insurance was suspended because the old insurance company wasn't aware that our guards were armed.
After how many years?
Well, yeah. Oh, we remember we had new insurance that started in September of last year. Even though it was part of the same larger company, they didn't look at the paperwork closely enough to know the difference. For elevator cap maintenance, we approved the proposal submitted by Rimco Maintenance to perform routine monthly refurnishing maintenance work on this for a service period of 3 years. And this includes a one-time scratch removal work that will be done on all the elevator cabs. That was at a cost of $7,200, but going forward, there's a charge of about $475, well, exactly $475 a month to cover all of the buildings. Management had proposed replacing all of the elevator mats and the building mats, which the board rejected, and they are instead going ahead. We approved replacing mats on an as-needed basis. There are some mats that need to be replaced, but certainly not all. So that was turned aside. There is a local law change order number 24 approved for an amount not to exceed $302,000. And this officially extends the project for 61 work days, or approximately 3 months. That gets to the May 2014 date that Robert referred to. But remember, Brent would love not to have to go that far. And just as a note, this in theory was previously approved. The change order just makes it official. But the work entailed was approved at the prior board meeting. Just give me a couple of points. Going down to replacement of windowsills, the board approved the replacement of 11 windowsills in the N2 and E7 elevations of building 4. For, as I said, a total of 11 windowsills at a cost of $5,200. Tenant Selection Committee report. There are now 3 new members of tenant selection. They were approved by the board last night. And there was also a recommendation for underwriting non-spousal or partner additions to stock certificates, which essentially means that parents of current stockholders or children of current stockholders simply need to be underwritten to be added to the certificate. That means just to ensure that in case if the need arises, they can take care of maintenance, etc. The Finance Committee motion recommend the board approve the recommendation of the Finance Committee to pursue the 5 largest estates and maintenance arrears in landlord tenant report. For the treasurer's report, the report that CSR is moving forward on getting all of the financial reporting in a form, in a customized form that the corporation is used to seeing, the 12-month, the trailing 12-month report, which gives an annualized view of everything in addition to the month by month and year-to-date reports. There are a number of variances meaning differences in what was budgeted versus what was actually spent in the budget. Some of them may be merely accounting, and some of them may be real. And because it's a cash basis, no statements can be made. We know that according to the cash basis approach, we may be about almost $1 million in below budget, but half of that is taxes, which we are not below budget on. It's just a timing issue. And a couple of the other items may be payments that we made this year for energy, for instance, that was for energy actually used last year.
sorry, go back to tenant selection, that's the question.
At the end.
Okay.
For the president's report, I'll just say, there are a couple of things, but I will jump to, there's a change of the regular meeting date for July, which will occur now on July 31st instead of the, I guess it would have been the 24th, because Russell will be on, the general manager will be on vacation until sort of the day before the scheduled meeting, so he wouldn't have time to prepare. President Donna also reported that he received correspondence from Toba saying that she, as chair of MGCA, is waiving her right to appoint members of the bylaws committee for this year. President Donna then appointed the following board members to the bylaws committee: Yvonne Martin Kozula as chair, John Buscarello, John Carter, Jeanette Rodriguez-Morick, Douglas Simmons, and Maitri Singh. And the bylaws committee was given the charge of dealing with the bylaws committee as presently constituted in the corporation's bylaws to conform to the New York State business laws and presenting a solution to shareholders by October. There was a motion from President Donna, which was approved. The motion was, whereas MGCA is an independent organization having its own bylaws, and whereas the Community Relations Committee is a standing committee of MGCA, and whereas the Community Relations Committee is listed in the MHC website as a standing committee of MGCA, and whereas the board in September 2010, above the objections of two board members pointing out the conflict with MGCA, made the Community Relations Committee a committee of the board. Be it resolved that the motions passed September 28, 2010, be rescinded, and that motion was that the board of directors reaffirms the committee, CRC, as a committee of the board of directors of MHC, and that a board member be appointed to the Community Relations Committee. This motion carried, with Lynn Bader and Larry Dodonna requesting that the reason for the no votes be recorded in the minutes. They felt that the motion caused a bylaws conflict. They were two of the four members who voted against that. Many of us will be unhappy. Many of you will be unhappy to learn that Iris Whittaker is leaving MHC. She is taking a new job where she will be property manager at a complex in the Bronx. President thanked her for her service and was really sorry to see her go. There was another board member motion by Maitri Singh that failed, and this was in a sense almost the reverse of the prior one that passed regarding community relations. Whereas Morningside Gardens Community Relations Committee represents MG cooperators and the MHC Corporation in its work with various community groups, partners, and organizations within the neighborhood, as well as with external government agencies and elected officials, and networking, connections, and community improvement advocacy, and information obtained and disseminated for the benefit of the gardens and its neighbors depends upon a clear connection to the board. The president has not only the authority, but also the responsibility to appoint a chair of the committee. It is hereby resolved that the board of directors reaffirms the Community Relations Committee as a joint committee of the board of MHC and MGCA, and that one board member be charged with attending its meetings and serving as its liaison. In discussions on the prior motion, the president affirmed that any support that CRC needed would be provided by the board, even if it was an MGCA committee. So there was no need for it to be a joint committee. That was a strong feeling. Also, it is something that, as this motion points out, it is in the bylaws of MGCA and not in those of MHC. Questions?
Ms. Ann Hogan, Judy, right? Sarah, I'm so Sarah.
Going back to the tenant selection committee, the limitation of sublet for apartment on the market, I wondered why that was withdrawn.
That was withdrawn because there is a theory which we have noted for some apartments that, they appear to be holding onto the apartment, waiting for a better price, using the subletting, and then, in the meantime, and not, in good faith, keeping them on the market. What we need to pursue is a determination that, it is actually in the market, that they are actually receiving, reasonable, offers, and they are simply turning them down. I mean, if they are not receiving offers, or the offers, are unreasonable, that's not a good reason to then cut off their subletting.
And is a distinction seen between having it on the market with the sales office and giving it to a broker?
No, only about a quarter of the apartments on the market are with brokers at this point. And there is actually a better success rate thus far with the sales and transfer managed apartments.
I'd like to.
But it's a short period of time with both of those.
I'd like to add something. I have to. I believe that the whole permission to sublet the apartment that you have moved out of is actually in contradiction of our section 59 of the bylaws. So, I know that the tenant selection committee suggested it without researching the bylaws, and it's been going on. So there is reason actually to accelerate the sales of apartment, because it's really violation of the bylaws.
That's why I wondered why it was withdrawn.
I'm sorry?
That's why I wondered why it was withdrawn.
Well,
To make sure that the reasoning was sound.
Okay.
thank you. Okay, you're next, yes, Judy.
Sarah.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna call you Judy. I'm sorry, Sarah, someday I'll learn.
Yes,
Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm still trying to understand some of the logic around the president's motion that passed around the Community Relations Committee. And it says, whereas MGCA is an independent organization with its own bylaws, whereas it's a standing committee of MGCA. And my question is that, my understanding is that what's now the Grounds Committee and also the Security Committee were also standing committees of MGCA. And so I fail to comprehend how one committee, there's one decision around one committee and another decision around two other committees. And I'm just wondering if MGCA took a stand on that?
I can't give you an answer about those other committees. They weren't really the subject of discussion.
Well, they were brought up, but.
I know they were brought up, but I really can't address those.
Could anyone else address them? Or is that not appropriate?
Well, I can sort of give a little background about that. The other committees that you mentioned have passed on with the agreement of MGCA many years ago, and they have not been joint committees. The CRC committee was not a joint committee of the board for at least 10 years, because one of the requirements of being a committee of the board is to have a liaison, a board liaison, which it didn't have for at least 10 years, I think it was. So it's actually been a committee of MGCA for the longest time. And also, I think, do we have our current bylaws? There's some, what does it say about the MGCA bylaws would have specific references to only the Community Relations Committee regarding not formation, but the chair and how the chair is chosen. And that was not the same for the Security Now Public Safety Committee. And those committees, 2 years ago, was it? We worked on, I was the chair at the time, and I formed an ad hoc committee to revise the MGCA bylaws. And one of the questions was to remove the names of those committees that were virtual, that had not been MGCA committees for a long time, but they can only be removed by a vote of the voting members. So even, and then again, those bylaws were voted down by, and needed a 2/3 vote to change those bylaws and, you know, get them a little more current, and they did not get the 2/3 vote. But that's why those committees for a long time passed over to the board with the consent of the MGCA voting body.
Janet, you think like
Going back to this, owner's representative, I'd like to know, because and Alfred, please correct me if I'm wrong, from my point of view, he's basically doing one of the functions that Mike McMahon did, on our behalf. And I'd like to know how much he's costing us. Do you know?
It's not a large amount. Frankly, I don't know if I'm at liberty to state that, but it's not it is not a salary that, it is on an hourly basis, let's put it that way.
So it's not what?
It's not a salary position, it's on an hourly basis. I honestly don't know if I'm free to say.
Why would you not be, I guess?
I'm not sure if that's confidential. I'm not sure if this is confidential
What was
information.
done discussed in closed session? If it wasn't, then it certainly is public knowledge.
I do know from closed session, but I don't know if it's limited to that.
Alfred,
Yeah.
he
Wait,
spoke
wait,
about
yeah,
it. in
wait,
open
wait,
session.
Was it?
He discussed his rates.
Oh, wait, he discussed it, yes, right, oh, sorry, yes, okay, fine, yes, it's essentially, he was in a 4-month contract, for, a total of $15,000. And that covered, attending 2 meetings a month, plus, building walkarounds at least once a week. So, I don't know what the hourly rate is, but that was the extent of it. And he has said 2 things. One, he feels that he's not needed to the extent that some members of the board may have felt he was. And at a certain point, he is going to say that he can't add any value. Okay.
Lottie?
Okay, I was a member of the MGCA Guidance Committee, and it was the principal committee which received contributions, but they are very, 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 very few. It wasn't worthwhile. And then it was changed into an education committee, and then Juanita White did all the writing and all that. And since she withdrew from that, the members of this committee were taken over in the NHSC council.
What is the question?
The question was about the ground committee.
How it became the grounds committee, because it used to be the gardens, what they call the garden committee, correct?
It was a gardens committee.
Yeah, it was a different.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the ground committee. I was appointed to chair the ground committee by Justin in 1997. And at that point, it had nothing to do with MGCA. So the switch must have taken place way before that.
Right.
Maybe 1990 or whatever, way before that. Mike, do you have a question? Yeah, you have asked a question. If after everybody asks one, you get a chance. March, and then.
The Community Relations Committee, did you say the board would appoint chair?
No, it's an MGCA committee. That was what was,
So MGCA would
yes.
chair. Since it's been around
also our CRC employees, not MGCA employees. They have already begun interviewing for her position. So they are trying to fill that, but that's Cooper Square as opposed to us. And in the meantime, Don Dixon, yeah, Dixon will be filling in. She, I've forgotten what her title is, but senior program manager. Yes, she will be filling in the interim.
I'm just concerned that then shareholders will be going to staff in a haphazard way and asking people to do things, and the staff can get overworked and upset and not know what the protocol is. And I think the personnel committee should be dealing with something like that.
That's really bad.
Lenny, and then Barbara.
Was anything reported, or do you have any knowledge of the grounds and the function of the grounds committee? Because at least 3 weeks ago, I talked to Mr. Sherman about the condition of the lawns and, being neglected. It seems to me, and it doesn't look that attractive. And he said, well, it's a question, the grounds committee has to make certain decisions first, et cetera, what they want to do. But, those lawns could certainly, and whatever has to be done in that respect, what's holding it up? Do you have any idea?
I personally don't, and it wasn't reported on last night. I don't know if there's anyone here who could report on it.
Somebody else asked before. Was somebody else, okay? Oh, go ahead, Lucky.
Yeah, the grounds committee is actually very active. We had the last meeting this afternoon concerning the safety of our trees after the 2 articles in the New York Times in the middle of May and end of May appeared that the city had a review of 10 years how many people were hurt and even killed by falling branches, and that Bryan Place was closed off after a branch fell. So we are concerned mainly now with the safety of our trees, which we discussed with the possibility of hiring an arborist this afternoon. And on the other side, the volunteers are trying very hard to save plants, and you have probably noticed that there was one building one new flowers set and on Amsterdam Avenue also, so we are very busy.
You want to get about the ground?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have a question, because I'd like to know if it is now the policy of the board that, or is it the past board and voted on the budget, that the grounds now has become something that the shareholders have to keep up? Because when I saw a sign that said, and you weren't on the board at that point, but come and pull weeds, I was disgusted. I don't pay the amount of money I do in maintenance to have to pull my own weeds. So I'd like to know what the present board's position is on the grounds, and whether or not they feel like it's something that we're supposed to keep up ourselves.
Even the past board did approve a landscaping company to do mowing and
Because I haven't been doing it.
That may be true, but we haven't done it. But I do know it's not the policy of the board to have it done by shareholders. I think that's a grounds committee initiative.
What I recall is in the March or April board meeting, there was a motion put forward by Russell Renee, and it was about the budgeted amount for the grounds is $61,000. That's what we put in the budget, and that the motion.
Thank you.
A motion by the general manager, and I don't recall the March or the April board meeting, was for $61,000, which is the budgeted amount to hire maintenance, ground lawn cutting and such, a maintenance company and an arborist. And the discussion amongst the board members was that didn't seem like enough money, $61,000. Russell said, well, I'll look into it, and if it's not possible, I will report back to the board. I personally have asked a couple of times the status of that, and perhaps, I know that, at Tuesday's meeting, the grounds chair was going to speak, but the meeting was such that a few, committee reports were pushed off to July, and that was one of them.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Maria Wilson.
On the matter of volunteer work on the grounds, I think if you had been around on Saturday morning and saw the great number of people who came out voluntarily, enjoyed what they were doing in the plantings, other volunteers have voluntarily taken care of weeds and so forth, and it seems to me that on the one hand, we certainly don't require anybody to pull weeds.
Well, we do because
but
it's
it
not
is-
being done.
Excuse me, but I'm not finished. We don't require anybody to pull weeds, or we certainly shouldn't. But there are a great many people who thoroughly enjoy doing that work, and it does have a wonderful effect of building community, not only here, but people on the street were delighted with what was going on, and actually some offered to help. I don't see anything wrong with that.
If I may sit for a minute, the grounds committee, I was chair at the time in 1998, started the annual planting by shareholders. That goes back 12 years ago, 14 years ago already. That's not new, it did not start this year or last year. It's been going on for years. Okay? So, yes, people have been doing it for years and enjoying it in the fall, in the spring, every spring. The question is, to what extent can volunteer carry the real care and maintenance of the grounds? This is really the issue I believe the Janet is referring to. And it's
So
not,
should that
okay?
become a problem, I'm sure we'll deal with it.
Okay, I mean, I just, you need to know, we have been planting, shareholders have been planting since the spring of 1998.
I didn't say it was new, there was just
Okay,
a great.
that's fine, okay. Yes,
I just want to name Donna Minaya. Everybody knows her. She was the head of the volunteers, and for years they did that, for years.
Yes, and I helped in the past, but I'm just
that's
commenting
fine,
on Saturday.
okay. All right, Robert.
I don't want
One
to
question.
preempt, if there are more people who want to comment
Yes.
on the grounds committee, I'm happy to
Okay,
defer
there are more people
my
who have
question,
spoken
because
about
it's
one
about a
of them.
different matter.
I only wanted to say in reference to your comment about Iris leaving, the reason she's leaving is because she's being promoted. So,
No, it's not a promotion.
Oh, it's not?
No, she's leaving CSO.
She's taking a new job.
It has nothing to do with
Higher
us.
position.
oh,
She's, yeah,
okay,
nothing personal.
okay.
No, but she said she'll be the manager,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
a promotion.
Yeah.
It's a higher
Yes.
level.
But not
But
within
it's not for
CSO.
No,
CSO.
no.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Oh, and then you, I'm sorry.
In relation to the grounds committee, my living room window, one of it, and my kitchen window, faces the ground. More and face ground, rather. More and more people are curbing their dogs
Yes,
on our lawn.
yes,
Oh.
yes.
Deliberately. I've seen people, and a number of people from Building 5 come out, they just come out and curb their dogs on the lawn. Something has to be done about that. And the money spent, time spent on improving and maintaining the grounds is wasted if many of the dog lovers couldn't care less. They could not care less and take their dogs off the leashes and curb them on the grounds. I think something should be stated by the grounds committee. We should take some action about that.
Okay, Robert?
I defer to Ann
Sorry,
here
it's-
because she
it
has a
relates
comment
to-
on the grounds committee and the dog issue.
It's the dog issue. I mean, I think I've only been here 5 years, I know this dog issue has gone on for many, many years, and it's.
Only Sundar News 1957.
And
Go
there have
ahead.
been, and there
Go
have been
ahead.
heated discussions about it, and I do not have a dog, I have no objection to dogs, but last year, here, there was an article in the Times, which I gave to Roland, which he did reprint in the Morningside newsletter, about the effect not only of feces, but dog urine on the grass and the flowers.
Trees especially.
And we had a bush in the front of Building 5 that you could just watch it gradually dying. But the other night, we had a building meeting in Building 5, and dog waste was one of the issues that we discussed. Kevin suggested putting maybe the kind of fences that are around the little garden plots by the trees could also be used to edge the grassy areas. But we discussed a number of other things, and I raised a possibility, which I will probably either start World War III or be shot for suggesting. But that is to not allow the dogs to go through the lobbies, because all the lobbies, when the scaffolding is down, exit onto grassy areas. I mean, they're all landscaped areas. If you go out the basement door, it's a paved area, and it leads very closely to the sidewalk and to the curb where the dogs should be curbed. There's one other thing. Last year, when I was on the Rules Committee, Captain Montalvo was considering a proposal to have little cards that security could hand out to offenders. And it was going to have the New York City ordinance on one side with the fines, and the Morningside rule on the other side. And it's been shelved because of lack of time and lack of money, and I've talked to him recently, and he said he's so overloaded that he can't do it. But, you know, it's probably something that could be printed up cheaply in-house, and not only security distribute, but if shareholders wanted to have a few of them and just hand them to somebody that they catched in the act. Those were the two suggestions that we had.
I have two more comments and we are closing. Diane and March, and we are finishing with the flush report. Go ahead, Diane.
Excuse me, I have deferred my questions about different matters concerning the flash report so that people could, as I think they ought to, talk about the grounds and dog
You're
issue.
deferring to Ann. You gave your time to Ann.
I,
We'll let you one more question.
You misunderstood me or I didn't communicate clearly.
Okay, you'll have one more question after the two of them finish, and that's it. Go ahead. Diane.
This only relates to the dog question. I do have a dog, as everybody probably knows. Okay. And she is not allowed on the grass. But on a positive side, I do want to mention that I have seen, and I don't know if this is deliberate or not, but I have seen that the guards, in fact, happen to be around when dogs are promenading. And it seems to me that they are operating as a visual cue to, you know, don't do it. Now, I don't know if this is a deliberate policy that the security is doing, but it is a little bit effective, you know? And that's it. That's it.
March.
On a very current update on the dogs this morning at 7:30, as I was walking up the path between the lawns, there was a man and his dog. The dog was doing his thing.
And what the man
And
doing?
the man did not pick up and just moved on, and I followed him, and he went out of the complex.
He doesn't belong here?
And he did not go into any of the buildings, so I think he came from a point.
We get visitor from
I
Monday,
went to security, and told security, and they said I asked if they could send someone tomorrow at 7:30. I'm sure he's gonna walk his dog, he can't, but maybe someone from the grounds committee could work with security on that and give out those cards.
Okay, Norbert, one more question? Yes, one more question.
Going back to Ezra's report and recommendations, and this also relates to the local law 11 and balcony work and to what I took to be the board members' arguments against the previous board regarding transparency, and this has to do with transparency. Ezra said that there should be a record of all board resolutions. And my question is there such a record? Where is it? May I see it? May anybody, any cooperator have access to it? That's one of the transparency questions. And the second transparency question goes back to what I said earlier, asked earlier regarding what you are, as a board, are going to reveal about how we have spent the money that we have spent. And it seems to me that if you indeed ran on the platform of transparency, you should try to maximize the amount of information that you supply to the shareholders. And that would be information that I think that would be worthy not only of shareholders' knowledge, but of shareholders' analysis, particularly if it regards questions of equity and cost and how much is being spent on whom.
Okay.
A couple of issues. In terms of the amounts, I take
The
that part of it,
resolutions,
yes,
the board.
Wait,
Right.
other people.
First resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First resolutions, there are two issues. I understand that there are, the board minutes going back years are in archives, and there was a recent request that resolutions be identified, so that there could be some sort of list. I don't think there is nothing at this point that is an organized list of board resolutions.
Is there a plan to do that?
I just said,
And,
yes,
you know,
I said there was.
categories, and not just chronologically, but categorically.
However it is decided to organize.
Digitally, perhaps. and-
Probably, yes.
Yes, good.
Yes. And as regarding the itemization of the spending for local law 11.
And
that
the balconies and terraces.
local law 11 and everything connected with that.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that can be done.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. May I get all the flashing codes, please, the draft? Everybody, please, collect them. Everybody pass it out, please.
Just the draft.
Anybody have any comment? Okay. All right, minutes. Approval of minutes. I believe I emailed to all of you that were the voting member for the minutes of April 16 this morning, the revised part of it. Basically, for those that don't, okay, everybody that is April 16, was here in April 16. Andrea Becker, Michael Dime, Jean-Louis Duberey, John Mercer, Mark Nissen, morning to all of you, and I don't know if you had a chance to see it. So I can tell you exactly what it is if you have your minutes with you.
Yeah.
Okay. On the second page, after the chimney, okay, number 3 is changed. As you can see, we crossed out a few lines, and what it reads now is report on April 3rd, 2012. I better use the microphone because my voice is. Okay, that's better. Report on April 3rd, 2012 special board meeting. Board member Larry Dodona did not attend that meeting, which was called for the purpose of reviewing the annual report from the MGCA chair, but reported that the board voted to include the MHHC in the MHHC 2011-2012 annual report, an introduction to the MGCA annual report, claiming there were inaccuracies in the report. So this is replacing what's said there before. The other one that is changed is on the third page. What is crossed out is from the first line, the elections committee on building 5 is not a standing committee, but is formed by the chair when an election is required. This is crossed out. What it says instead is, the work of the election committee in building 5 was completed after the results of the public counting were confirmed and publicly posted. That's the change, okay? In the next paragraph, which is the 4th line on the page 3, instead of neither contender, it says neither Kay Bradley nor Ironson could be seated. So those are the changes that I've received, and I have found them absolutely acceptable because they were correct, and I incorporated them into the minutes. So I need a motion now to accept the minutes, I guess as amended, because it's been amended from the original I sent you. Can I have a motion?
Point of order, Madam Chair. I submitted a request that Sarah Ryan's report that followed your report at that meeting be at least mentioned.
What Sarah Ryan requested was to change things about the election committee, which I did.
Well, Sarah Ryan may have requested that, but I requested that her report, as from Building 5, should certainly have been at least mentioned when you first reported on Building 5 yourself. Sarah Ryan was there and was reporting from Building 5, and there's not even a mention that she reported.
Okay, so what would you like to add to that?
Pardon me?
Just a second, yes, John.
Well, I think that's a good idea, because when I was at the meeting, I remember Sarah Ryan mentioning that she thought she had not necessarily done the right thing in terms of doing a recount of elections. And so I think that should be mentioned in the minutes.
Okay, so what would you like me to mention in the minutes?
Well, I would like there to be a summation of her report. If you'd like me to write that for you, I will check.
I think we should have, I'm sorry, I think we should have Mrs. Ryan write a summary of that.
Okay.
Ms. Ryan, pardon me, of what was said here the last time, which, as I recall, was that she had counted the ballots in secret, counted the ballots in her own apartment without the knowledge of the two candidates. I think that definitely needs to be mentioned in the minute.
Okay, so would you like to not to approve the minutes now and wait for next month? Or
Yes,
would you like to approve
I would like to.
I make a
approve
motion
it.
to approve, to forestall the approval of the minutes till next
September 27th.
I would second that motion.
Okay, now of the people that can vote on it, whose mentioned before. Which one of you would like to postpone the approval of the minutes of April 16 until September 27? Okay. Okay, 13 would like to postpone. Anybody against postponing it? Abstention? Okay, so it passes. Yes, we are for the two. All right, fine, no problem. Thank you.
So for the point of information, has building 5's issue been resolved?
That will, that will.
Okay, May 13 meeting. The May 13 meeting, I've gotten some comments, and I did not have a chance to send it to all of you. So I do have copies of what the changes are. Let me see, the people that were here and are voting members is Ann Bogan, Andrea Becker, Mike Demon, John Dubreuil, Robert Flersch, John Mercer, Mark Nissen, Louis Papier, St. John Parson, Dr. Strauss, Barbara William Henry, Marie Wilson, Diane Cook, Joanne Winston, and Linda Zender, and then of course Anne Burley and Tom Francis. So the change that I was requested to make, which I incorporated, is on the fourth page. And if you have your minutes with you, I could tell you and I could forward it to you, or I could give it out. Okay, question, I was asked to end a question. So number 8, after number 6, number 7 now is a question, what about Community Relation Committee? The answer from board member John Martin Kazula was that the president has until the July board meeting to decide. Now, the previous 7 and 8 questions don't belong into that section of the discussion of the flash report, okay? They belong to the next, and that was missing altogether. Chair report. Chair, he Francis requested all building chair to take under responsibility of printing and posting MGCA meeting notices until the communication committee brings to the board the recommendation for procedures of printing and posting notices. This was missing from here. I was asked to add it. Okay, the next one is missing also, is not properly written, is building 5 election. At issue is a count of the ballot which was done about a week after the ballot count in public and posting of the results as required by Building 5 bylaw, okay? Kevin Bradley is challenging the recount. This is, as it was 9:55 p.m., the chair asked the assembly whether they want it, and the rest stay the same, okay? So basically, a couple of questions are out. The chair report is added, and a very short sentence about Building 5, because the main discussion about Building 5 took place at the closed session, and this is open session minutes. So, if anyone would like it, of the people that are voting on it, that's fine. Why don't you give it?
Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I have more, yeah. I have a lot of coverage.
I didn't get this.
Can we move on and then go back?
This wasn't here.
Yeah, I'm just saying, maybe we should move on to the next item of business and then come back to this while people are trying to.
move to approve the minutes.
As amended.
As amended, yeah.
Okay, a second?
I second it.
Second, Black, second. Okay, so the people whose name was mentioned before, is at the meeting, who is for approving the minutes? Against? Are you for or against? So we counted you already. Two. Abstention?
One.
One abstention, okay? Thank you. What? Two abstention. Okay? Thank you. Okay. The next thing on the agenda is, building 5. Do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you.
Here.
Okay, thanks. I decided this afternoon, after thinking about it for a day or so, that.
You have to put the microphone next to your mouth.
Oh, better? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
We're suggesting in Building 5 a re-election of delegates. Just thinking about the last day or so, I can continue to assert my delegate win via the bylaws. And I was thinking, I'm not sure, but what I can do is wait till September to make a decision. There are many factors going in for either way to resolve this. People have put the effort in on both sides. They were expecting some sort of resolution tonight. I'm not looking to resolve that situation. I'd like to let it rest over the summer. To those who put the effort in to try and bring this to some resolution, I apologize that that has not been carried through, that I'm not providing any sort of closure to this. I just feel comfortable with putting it off till that time.
Okay, thank you. John?
I'm sorry, I don't know what, I don't need that microphone, thank you. I don't know what that means, putting it off until September. Does that mean that there will be another election? Does it mean there will be an election between Mr. Ronson and Mr. Bradley? Or does it mean there will be an election between a new election of all of the candidates?
And?
There was a building-wide poll conducted last week, and the majority voted for a new election among the 5 original delegates, who are Erwin, Kevin, Joyce, Marie, and Bernice Wick. And we'll probably have it in the middle of September to allow people to get back from their vacations. However, I also have a motion tonight, which I submitted to Tova and received no response, and I'd like to read it. I didn't want to interrupt Kevin.
I'm sorry, your motion came after your motion arrived after notices were posted.
You could have responded to it, but,
You're right, I apologize.
whereas the Morningside Gardens Cooperatives Assembly has no jurisdiction over the internal affairs of the 6 individual buildings comprising Morningside Gardens.
No.
And further, excuse me.
She said to slow down so she could hear.
Okay. Whereas the Morningside Gardens Cooperative Assembly has no jurisdiction over the internal affairs of the 6 individual buildings comprising Morningside Gardens. And further, that the bylaws of the Morningside Gardens Cooperative Assembly do not explicitly give it such jurisdiction over the internal business of the 6 buildings. It is hereby moved that the agenda item related to the Building 5 election is inappropriate for consideration and discussion at an MGCA meeting, and therefore should be removed from the agenda for the June 28th MGCA meeting.
Second.
Jan?
Yeah, I have something to say about that. We're gonna talk, right?
Sure, it's open for discussion, go ahead.
You know, I honestly have to say, I've long since lost patience with saying anything other than what I'm gonna say from the hip. believe that nobody should have anything to say about another building. But, now having said that, let me then go to the letter that was sent to the board by these very same people who tried to decimate this body by saying that, pointing out about other buildings' elections. That was what they did. They threw this body into a disaster. They had the board president, who was obviously in cahoots, taking 13 people, 2 of whom were not shareholders in this organization, saying that MGCA did not have a legitimate voice in this community because of the elections in other people's buildings. And these same people, and I'm getting pissed, these same people, that's okay, you can handle it. You handle wildfires, you can handle me.
Okay.
These same people are now saying, yeah, but that's all right, I don't know my These same people are now coming, and from a point of view that I actually do agree, but find it completely hypocritical. And I will keep hammering that point, that you don't get to do one thing and then all of a sudden turn around and do another thing because it's convenient. You either have a moral purpose, a core, integrity, relationship to your word, or you don't. So if you say, we shouldn't be involved in your building, though, what the hell were you talking about the election in my building, or building 1, or building 2? So that's my point.
John.
Well, I have 2 points to make here. I have a copy in front of me of this Building 5 poll, and it's pretty interesting. It says that it gives you 3 choices. It says that I hereby affirm the Building 5 Election Committee's decision of May 19th announcing Erwin Ronson as the 3rd candidate. I favor holding a new vote, or I wish to abstain. Now, the thing that it's sort of lacking is that there's no mention here about the original election, which, as I understand it from Mrs. Ryan's explanation, was conducted with under the proper bylaws of the building. There's no mention here whatsoever about whether or not you would accept the results of that election. And then there's a little Freudian slip here in this piece of paper, because then at the bottom here it says from the Building 5 Officers Committee, and it mentions Erwin Ronson as a Building 5 officer. And frankly, I don't know how Erwin Ronson can run against Kevin Bradley for a voting dispute if he's already one of the 5 officers on the committee. And I'm willing, if anyone wants to see this piece of paper, it's over here.
It wasn't done in secret either.
Oh, I'm sure it wasn't done in secret, and I also have, if I'm not quite finished here.
One person is going.
I'm not quite finished here. It says 67 shareholders voted, and I'm assuming that this was all counted in public, but there's no statement here as to whether or not it was. Hold new vote for delegate position among the original 5 candidates in the fall. 29 people voted for that. 27 people affirmed the May 19th decision. 9 people abstained and 2 people no vote. Now, I don't understand how you can have a ballot with no vote. You've either voted for one or the other, or you've abstained. You can't have a no vote. A no vote is meaningless. So I just find that these attempts, from my point of view, are just trying to affirm and reinforce the fact that the election committee, the building chair, and the people mentioned here, Amy Burton, Emily Wenzel, Joyce Quinn, Marie Wilson, and Erwin Ronson, all want you to be assured that Erwin Ronson is the real candidate. And I have a real problem with this, because this is not
the real delegate.
Pardon me, the real delegate. This is not a solution to the problem that was discussed in several meetings in this organization. Now, Sarah Ryan came to this organization and admitted publicly that she did what she did. She counted these votes in secret. She came up with this conclusion, and we're all supposed to accept that Sarah Ryan is a wonderful person and we can trust her. But that's not the point here. The point is that you don't count ballots in secret once you've counted them in public. And the second thing is that I really don't understand why the members of the Building 5 election committee aren't involved in the Building 5 poll. There's no one from the election committee mentioned on this poll. I don't know where this came from. I don't see anything in your bylaws which says that if we have an election and we have a problem, we'll have a poll and we'll send it out and we'll see who, responds to the poll. There's nothing in your bylaws about this. There's nothing in your bylaws about a recount. So I'm frankly find this document to be rather embarrassing, especially coming from a chair of a building who was a former board member who should know better than to send a piece of garbage like this out to people that is utterly biased. It is utterly biased and unfair to Mr. Bradley that he's not even mentioned in this building poll. He's not even given the opportunity to respond in this building poll. It is a disgrace. And I don't find this a solution to the problem. And while Mr. Bradley, for whatever reason, has stood up here tonight and said he will accept what's going on here, I do not accept what's going on here because this is a travesty of this organization.
Okay. Lucky?
Well, the accusation which was made last year against Building 2, they having had no election for years, having thereby disenfranchised our cooperators, was deeply hurting MGCA and personally too. And we in Building 2 had an election, and the same people who were accused were re-elected. I mean, the accusation against us, it was so unfair, and it is, the accusation now is also against all justice, against any feeling of fairness.
Ben?
First of all, the reason Kevin's name was not included in the poll as an option is once the election committee found there were errors in that first vote, which they did, that couldn't go back to that option.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
I'm sorry, that is the fact of the matter. I mean, I don't know where to begin to respond to John. There's a big difference between having a democratic election in a building and having no election in a building for 5 years or more.
Wait, we're talking about another building?
John, Margaret, then you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm not going to speak to John. I don't know what's going on in his building, and maybe he can tell us. But in any case, it seems to me that there's a conflation of issues here.
What?
That is that not only are people misrepresenting issues, but they're not quite wrapping their heads around what we're doing right now. And it seems to me what we're doing right now is raising before MGCA the question of whether MGCA is going to take seriously standards for membership in MGCA. And if they are, what are they going to do about them? That's one question. The second question, and standards for membership, as you know, who've read the bylaws, allow people who seem to allow people who have come from buildings that have no bylaws, have no official building organization and have had no elections for years, to continue to represent themselves as if they were delegates elected by some building at MGCA and continue to vote. Now, that's an MGCA issue. That is definitely an MGCA issue. Do we and should we have standards for membership in and voting membership in MGCA? We are perfectly, as just a minute I'm speaking, we are perfectly in our rights to address that issue of setting standards for membership in MGCA. However, what they're talking about, Building 5, it seems to me, is talking about, is their own standards for their own building representatives.
Which they violate.
Which, if they set their standards and run their elections, and they violate or don't match what MGCA wants, then MGCA can say that your delegates can't be delegates. And they properly should say that. But that doesn't mean that Building 5 and Building 4 doesn't have the right as autonomous organizations to set their own standards, and MGCA be damned.
Michael.
It seems to me that Building 5 violated their own bylaws. Their bylaws
are you
say,
from
excuse
Building
me,
5?
excuse me, I've read their bylaws.
Okay.
And their bylaws appear to say that once they post the election results, there is, the election has been completed and the delegates have been defined. End of story.
Is this the standard you
Doesn't
want to
matter,
set?
it's not.
No.
It's not.
The standard is rules. And if you violate your own bylaws.
You do not, excuse me, you do not have the floor. Michael is speaking, excuse me. Go ahead, Michael.
I think I said what I needed to say, Tony. Thank you.
John.
Well, I'd like to address a couple of the points that Robert made. All right. Now, we had a reading of Building 5's bylaws, and we discussed this, I don't know, 1 or 2 meetings ago, which it's been so long ago I can't even remember anymore. But the reality is that there are no provisions in Building 5 bylaws for a recount. So that if the count was made, and if the people who are making the count can't count, that's a problem. But the fact is that the count was made, a decision was made, candidates were elected, results were posted early. Results were not only posted early, but left up for well over a week in the building. And then all of a sudden, there's a problem. So the reality is, in response to Robert's question about Building 5's bylaws, is that they were not followed. Here, end of story. The second thing is that I'm very happy that Robert has said in public that if MGCA has a problem with an election in a building, that perhaps the governing body of MGCA should be able to rule on it, pass a motion on it, and deny candidates their right to a seat if election irregularities have occurred. Now, you've just said that, and yet you have signed this letter that went to the board of directors in June 2011, one of the disenfranchised 13, I might add, telling everyone else in everyone else's building what they can do and what they can't do. And here we are. Now you're wishing to submit changes to rules that you haven't even followed yourself. And I will say this, in addition, Mrs. Frankus asked Sarah Ryan last year to convene a committee to create rules for the buildings.
A correction, it was Yvonne.
I beg your pardon, sorry.
When she was chair.
Yvonne Martin asked Mrs. Ryan to convene a committee to create rules for the buildings. Mrs. Ryan brought those rules to this committee. She read them out loud. Now, you were all in attendance. Mr. Flirsch was in attendance. I was in attendance. It would have been very easy for you to stand up and say, well, you know, we need these rules. Let's have a motion to make these rules part of MGCA. Did anyone stand up and do that? No. Did anyone on this list of the people who wrote to the board condemning MGCA do that? No. Did Joan Levine, Robert Flirsch, Marie Ledoux, Marie Wilson, Norman Levine, Ann Bogan, did any of them stand up and say, let's vote and make these rules part of MGCA so we can have some rules about how our buildings are governed and so the buildings can be answerable to the committee of MGCA? They did not. The room was silent.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Is there a time limit on speeches?
Well, we did not exercise it this time.
We base our time limit on Mr. Flirsch.
I didn't ask you. Thank you, Madam
No,
Chair.
we did not this time. Okay, Eileen,
He responded.
I'm sorry,
He addressed me
wait a
personally.
minute, let me speak for a second. Janet, Robert, and that's the end of it. And there is a motion on the table. That,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Because there is, okay. Let's see. So, Marie, Jen, Robert, and Kevin.
Oh, I know what I like. I wanna call the question. I'm calling the question.
Well, thank you so much. I think we need to follow to the question.
You have to vote on my calling the question.
Okay, so who wants to call the question?
I'll second that.
I'll second that. Okay, so we are voting now whether we are going to start discussion and vote on the motion that Ann Bogan brought to the table. Okay, should we have asked her to read it again? Can you read it again, please?
Yes, please.
So everybody can remember what we are voting on. Thank you, Ann.
Whereas the Morningside Gardens Cooperators Assembly has no jurisdiction over the internal affairs of 6 individual buildings comprising Morningside Gardens. And further, because the bylaws of the Morningside Gardens Cooperators Assembly.
Could you please use the microphone? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Thank you.
Whereas the Morningside Gardens Cooperators Assembly has no jurisdiction over the internal affairs of the 6 individual buildings comprising Morningside Gardens. And further, because the bylaws of the Morningside Gardens Cooperators Assembly do not explicitly give it such jurisdiction over the internal business of the 6 buildings, it is hereby moved that the agenda item related to the Building 5 election is inappropriate for consideration and discussion at an MGCA meeting and should therefore be removed from the agenda for the June 28th MGCA meeting.
Thank you. Who is for the motion?
I thought we were voting on whether we should cut off debate.
Yeah, debate, right.
Cut off discussion.
This is solely to cut off debate.
Okay, cut off debate.
And I'm not sure
Okay.
you have a right to cut off debate like that. I will investigate.
Okay, who wants to cut debate?
May I make a friendly amendment?
No, that's not it.
No,
The calling
this
the
is strictly to
question.
cut off debate.
Okay.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, was that for the motion?
No, that was to cut off debate.
Sorry.
Okay? Who is against cutting off debate? Who is against? 1, 2. Okay, any abstention to cut off debate? 1, 2, 3 abstention. Okay.
I'm sorry, how many were against it?
2 against, 3 abstention. Okay. So we are going to now vote on Ann's motion. Who is for Ann's motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. 4 it's a late hour. Since it's now 9:71 on my time, I suggested we postpone, I will forgo my report, and I asking that Robert, agree to bring his motion next meeting. It's 9:70. 9:30. Because at this point, everybody, laying on full gun out.
I disagree, Madam Chairman. I think we should deal with, Mr. Flirsch's, motion tonight.
Okay, are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion to support this. I can't make a motion. I can't push his own motion. He has to do that for himself.
No, wait a minute now. Are you suggesting we should extend the meeting now?
I am speaking to say that I think we should deal with this motion this evening. That is up to the chair to decide if she wishes to extend the meeting.
No, it's really up to the assembly to decide.
Oh, whatever.
Okay, so.
Then I would make a motion to extend the meeting to deal with this, motion this evening.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, Robin. Okay, so we have, I'm sorry, we have to vote. Okay, the vote is, do we continue the meeting now to discuss the motion on the table from Robert Flesch? Who is for extending the meeting now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Extending the meeting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who is against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 9. 9 are against the extension.
I abstain.
Abstention? 1, okay, I'm abstaining.
I make a motion to adjourn then.
Was the best
Well,